remember to record it.
Remember to record.
Yeah, it'll be recorded.
Yes.
And we will we'll have it on our site afterwards, so you can watch. If you miss something, you can watch it later. So let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
Steve, why don't you start with just telling us how you came to be a brewery here in I think, what is it, a half-mile long driveway to get here?
A third of a mile.
Third of a mile?
But
Okay.
who's counting? We count more in the winter than we do in the summer.
Yes, I imagine you have a big snow crowd.
Yeah, I was counting when I was trying to bring my Miata down here.
Right.
Well, I do get all of the creepy banjo player jokes and so forth and so on.
So you are literally, it's down in really the woods of Canterbury. I mean, it's a little bit of a drive to get out here.
Yeah, so I mean, and the cool thing is for us, I mean, I have 70 acres here, but I'm adjacent to over 2,000 acres of conservation land between here and Shaker Village, so I have a big backyard.
Yeah. That's great. Well, it's a beautiful setting. The third of a mile drive down here is a beautiful drive, although a little bumpy at places. Probably better in the summer.
It is a little intimidating for those folks from away.
Yeah.
Just from away.
From away.
Yeah. Bring your big car with the one with the ground clearance and whatnot.
Yeah, right.
But when you do make it down that driveway and you arrive at this building, which is a barn, which I believe you built, is that right?
So I designed and built the building back 25 years ago for my woodworking business. So there was never any plan to have a brewery in this building. However, the slippery slope was that there was always beer on tap in this building.
So you've
So
been
there it
brewing
was.
here for a long time.
And then, when I saw in 2010 that New Hampshire was creating a nanobrewery license, it kind of piqued my interest. So I thought, well, you know, that maybe I could do that. Maybe that'd be my next venture. And I'm sort of the guy, like, I like beer. Maybe I should open a brewery. How hard could that be?
Right. Oh yeah, no, easy. Yeah. Everybody should do it.
We should do that, right?
Yeah. If you like the
wine, why
just
don't we
do it.
open a
Yeah, don't
winery?
think about it at all. Just
I
go
like
for it.
food. Maybe I should
food.
open a restaurant.
Yeah,
How hard could that be?
No, don't do that.
That is a slippery slope.
That's a bigger slippery slope.
They're all slippery slopes.
Yeah, that is true.
There we were, and I got licensed in 2012. Really had not had any experience brewing, so just kind of figured it out as I went. Still learning, and designed and built this one-barrel brew house, and I'm still doing exactly the same process that I did over 10 years ago when I started.
Wow.
I think that's the coolest thing about this, is that you haven't. I guess you have grown. You've certainly grown a number of people who know about you and come and find you. And there have been minor areas in which you've pushed out a little bit. You added the outdoor patio recently. But for the most part, this is as it's been since you opened.
Yeah, well, so many licenses that started off as a nano brewery in New Hampshire use that as a stepping stone. So they've become brew pubs or full-on beverage manufacturers or whatnot over the years, and I'm one of the very few that nano was my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And you're sticking with it.
Nano.
So what I noticed here on right here at the bar,
Not so nano. John?
is
Are you stealing his money?
No, it's a pot full of money.
Yeah.
So there are dollars in here. So is that how a nano brewery survives? Is on the dollars?
Well, that's just
how is it that
that's
you're
part of the bucket accounting system.
How is it? So do you sell beer in cans and growlers or in?
Because my system is
How is
so
it that-
small. I mean, when I started, people said you cannot make money in the brewing industry unless you have a 10-barrel brew house.
At least, yeah.
And that was sort of the industry standard threshold, really. And then all these nano breweries started showing up and saying, well, actually we can.
Okay.
And I did distribute very briefly to some stores. I did farmers markets with bombers.
You have a bottling line.
I had a bottler that I made up for myself, and I'm thinking about doing cans.
Not a line.
Yeah, like doing some cans, but just cans as another takeaway option from here, because that's really the MO for this business model.
Sure, that would appear to be the case. Yeah.
Point of sale. If I start trying to distribute then
No
that
distributing.
sounds like a lot of work.
And it's not and a one-barrel system, right?
Have you been to a beer store in the last, like, I don't know, 2 years? It's cuckoo bananas.
Once or so.
So
yeah.
how would anybody pick out your beer from there?
Well, and people that are full on capable of distributing are having a difficult time of that because there's so much saturation out there. There's only so much room in the coolers, and
And the big boys are buying up that space as fast as they can.
yeah, like the supermarkets, that's always the thing, right? I mean, the big
How to get on the
names,
end, how to stand
they
out.
secure the best spots and the best heights and the best beginning and end of the aisle, whatever, that where people see things, and then
Oh,
everybody else gets stuck somewhere else.
And a big trend is the big beer companies are buying the smaller craft brewers so that they can put what we think is small
Right.
craft beers,
Right.
Yeah,
which
Goose
are
Island was a craft
Goose
brewery.
Island was a craft
And they did
brewery,
their
yeah.
thing, and then they were absorbed,
Budweiser.
and then it changed.
Sure, and then there's faux label, faux. It was some guy had this cute little video blog. He was going through this little town in Wisconsin looking for. I'm looking for Green Valley craft beer brewers, and everybody in the town's like, I don't know. I know. The only brewery here is Anheuser-Busch.
Right.
I was actually in Dover yesterday, and I visited a few breweries there, and I learned of this brewery. I think it's in Somersworth or somewhere near Dover, and they said it's owned entirely by Budweiser.
Huh? In Dover.
Either or right around Dover is a brewery that is owned by Budweiser.
Interesting.
A small craft brewery. And I'd never heard of that before. But they're not just buying up craft brewers. It
Yeah.
sounds like they're starting their own.
Yeah, they start a faux brand.
Yeah.
Just,
Do they get
yeah.
to be labeled as an independent brewer?
I don't know. I didn't visit them.
Well, I'm holding out for the big bucks.
Yeah,
when they show
sure,
up.
as you should. I actually don't really have a problem with that. I mean, if Anheuser-Busch wants to...
As long as there's more available good quality beer.
Well, as long as they're making a craft beer, right? So it's something that a craft beer is something that comes at a scale and has a personality and a person behind it, not a marketing campaign.
So one of
That's
the
thing.
challenges is, and I don't know the real truth behind this, but one of the risks is that when Budweiser buys, say, Goose Island, and I don't know if they did.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, so immediately they start figuring out how do they run Goose Island on less costly materials.
Right.
How do they bring their cost down to make a craft
Because
beer?
that's what big corporations do.
That's right. So
They walk
that's
in
the
and
risk.
they cut costs.
Why
they
wouldn't
fire
they
people.
just buy it and run it as it was?
Well, this is what happened with
They
Lagunitas.
obviously bought it because it was profitable and it had a good label and a good product. Why wouldn't they just keep, okay, that's going to generate X amount of dollars for it. Let's just let the owners keep doing what they're doing. We provide the capital, done.
That would be really nice.
So whatever happened at Lagunitas, because we went
Right.
on our trip, we got pictures on our stuff from Lagunitas. They were bought by somebody, InBev or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
whatever the big. So I just spoke with a brewer there. They have not changed anything about how they brew their beer. They are doing exactly what they've always done.
So
So that's a good thing, right?
That is a really good
It's
thing.
not a
Yeah.
clear answer, but what the answer to your question is, as with any large corporation, it's bean counters who are sitting behind a desk,
Of course.
who are running the numbers, and it becomes a numbers game, and nobody's in front of the customer, nobody's out at Goose Island. Somebody
But
in
a
some
savvy,
corporate
but a savvy
office.
CEO is looking at it and going, wow, okay, if we drain this all down and make it really bad, that doesn't work. We
Sure.
should go with what's there.
But you're
and
talking
leave
about a
Lagunitas
CEO
doing that
who's
thing.
making 92% of all the beer on the planet. So you have to keep that in mind.
But I
How much
think
interest
they're
is
trying to evaluate at some point what's the value? Is it the
Right.
brand or is it the product?
Right.
And I think for the most part, in a lot of cases, it's the brand.
It's the brand.
And not 100%. There's going to be plenty of people that are going to be like, "What's going on with this?" And they beat the bushes. But
Yeah.
then most people are like, "Oh yeah, dude, it's my beer."
But that's what, what I love about what's happened in the brew world in the past few decades is there are places like this that have
Is
cropped
this-
up
Yeah.
all over the place.
So this is the
Thousands of breweries now in this
antithesis.
country when just 3 decades ago there were 400 or 800 or whatever it was. It's just exploded.
So when
And
I
it's
got
great.
licensed in 2012, I was the 4th nanobrewery in New Hampshire, which means I was the 4th nanobrewery licensed in the country. And then it was the 19th brewery altogether, brew pubs, breweries,
In the state.
beverage man-
In the state.
in New Hampshire in 2012, and now there's almost 100.
Wow.
Just a year
And
or
as
two
that-
ago, I was thinking 80 was
As
the
that
number.
started happening, I'm always behind on the numbers. I tell people here, like, there's 80. They said, no, there's like 95. I was like, oh.
I was in
Good news for me.
Dover.
Yeah, you said there was 4 of them
And I
within
could
walking distance.
walk less than a mile to
Yeah.
5 of them
Yeah.
Yeah.
in Dover.
Yeah.
Well, and the media's been talking about when the bubble's going to burst, blah blah blah. When's the bubble going to burst? And the smartest thing I've heard written about that was that as long as the culture supports
That's what
the
they-
industry,
Right.
we haven't even approached the number of breweries
Nope.
and brew pubs like in England and or like in Germany, because those cultures support beer and brewing in craft or small venue
Yeah.
places to go sit and have a beer.
Yeah.
I was reading years ago about the history of brewing in New England and New Hampshire, and there were so many more breweries back in the late 1800s than there are today. They're everywhere. All the towns have their own brewery.
Yeah.
That was
And beer
it's
was
great.
maybe more ubiquitous drink.
Yeah.
And now, now it's you've got hard seltzers, you've got hard lemonades,
yeah.
you've got ciders, you've got meads, you've got wines, you've got fruit wines, you've got grape wines.
On a
and
positive
now there's so
note,
many choices.
all over.
I just read an article that a large national brand hard seltzer had to dump tens of thousands of
Oh,
gallons
yeah.
because they overshot the market, which is good news because I'll never understand hard seltzers
yeah.
myself. But I can't actually honestly say I've ever had one, so I really don't know. But just the concept
I've had
of
them.
it is
Yeah, they're not that good. I mean, really, there's just an alcohol
delivery thing. What'd you
Why
just
don't
have?
have any alcohol? So what are we drinking here?
Well,
This is all good stuff.
Before we talk about that, I want to just mention, and I believe this is true. You built all of this, right?
Yes.
It's
For better or for worse, this is a map of my mind.
yeah. Well, you guys
Yeah,
out
that
there.
part of your mind up there is a little wonky.
I feel like I've stepped back in time. Whenever I come here, I feel like I've stepped back in time. If not in time, I've crossed the Atlantic into a small European pub. You've captured this really special feeling in the way you set your taps up, in the way you built it, in the way the bar is, and the music playing in the background. It's really, really cool. And
Which is unlicensed music, by the way.
I just want to be clear.
To anyone who's listening.
You can't in the internet, out on the internet, you can't see or feel what we're feeling, and so I'm going to take some pictures before we leave and post them
that'd be
out
great.
there for everybody to see some of the nuances of what we're experiencing, because this is really a special
Well,
place.
thank you, and it's always great to get that kind of gracious feedback, but it's especially good when somebody comes in here and they are actually from England and they say the same thing, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yes.
Nailed it. And that includes, and I'm looking behind you, Steve, at the kettle where you brew your beer, which
Yeah.
Right.
is, I think you told us earlier, is the only right now wood-fired.
I just
brewing
Googled
kettle.
it again the other day just to see what I should say or not say, but I can't find anything else in New England that's doing
Right.
wood
And you built it.
fired. Yes.
The whole thing.
Yep. Yeah, so it's basically a big rocket stove boiler. I mean, you Google rocket stove. There's all kinds of cool designs for these super small, super efficient fireboxes that can make soup for a village in third world countries using whatever biomass is available to create a super hot, efficient fire. So when I started this, I kind of was thinking about doing some numbers and just how am I going to do this? Am I going to do an electric brewery or propane? Or
Yeah.
I think, well, I don't have any propane growing out back, but I do have a lot of trees. So,
70 acres worth.
Yeah.
so that'd be kind of fun. And I think from the very beginning, I had a real strong sense that relevancy was going to be important to me because I was so far out and invariably such a destination place. So it's not like some place you just stroll upon.
Right.
You'd have to be pretty lost, honestly. Yeah. I was on the Appalachian Trail and I wound up at Canterbury Aleworks.
Aleworks,
Not
that's
set off. No, not
Every
set
once in a
off.
while, someone does do that. But yeah, staying relevant. And I tell people, I say, if you see anything around here that reminds you of another brewery, tell me, because I want to get rid of it.
Right.
So that's kind of my MO. I just I want to make sure
Don't
that
go
it's
too
a-
far, because
it's a-
beer reminds me of
Well,
that.
it's what this little 10-year-old girl was. She was up to the task. She's.
I think I've seen that at
And then she said,
603.
"The beer." I said, all right. Well, that's not fair.
You gotta draw the line.
That can stay, yes.
So speaking of beer,
Speaking
let's-
of which,
Yeah,
let's
well,
tell us about the beer.
where we
Wait,
at?
before you
Well,
get
hold
into your
on,
beer,
hold on.
let me check
Wait,
in, see
what?
if there's any questions.
Sure. Okay.
And maybe we get filled up with some.
Well, we're going to talk about beer.
Yes.
So I think we have to go
Let
down
me
the
see
line.
who's-
We have to go down the line anyway, right?
So we
have
got.
some of your classic ale.
Sure.
Thank you, please.
Let's see.
All right. Who we got on there?
Priscilla had a question. She says, "I'm having trouble with the streaming." Yes,
Yeah.
Priscilla. We apologize. That is. That's probably on our end, not your end. We're on it. We're in the woods, and so we're having trouble
you.
getting the signal out of here. But hopefully, this is all getting recorded and it'll be live. If you missed anything, you can pick it up at after the show is over. So sorry about that. And Priscilla also says, "Sorry, going to sign off as the unintelligible for some reason, all blurry and poor quality.
shoot.
That's too bad."
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's probably what's going on.
Darn it all.
Yeah, it appears as though we're bumping up against quality issues. But Matt's there. Hey Matt, he's hanging in there. Thanks, Matt. And he's obviously getting some of the transmission of signal because he's commenting on the road. So and I'm sure you'll get to meet Matt soon enough. He's one of our club members. He's been coming to us for about 3 or 4 years now.
From
He's
Western
one of the most
Massachusetts.
eclectic people. He's been all over the world. He's anything new and fresh and interesting is right up his alley.
Nice.
He wants to discover it and explore it. So I can't wait till
He'll
he comes
appreciate the
here.
ambiance.
He'll really
Yeah.
appreciate
Nice.
it. Yeah.
So the worst case scenario where will be recorded
That is my hope. Yes, that we're capturing the recording
and will be able to be
and we'll put it up
reviewed later.
live.
Okay.
later.
And then it'll go smooth.
Yeah.
Because the recording part has nothing to do with the internet, right?
I hope so. Remember, we already agreed that I'm only knowledgeable to just a slight degree more than Steve is about all of this stuff. So.
You know how to plug things in pretty
Yeah,
well.
you
which
plugged
is
it in and you,
noticed that you
and I
plugged
saw
a
you
lot of
put
things
Not
in.
very encouraging,
record.
but
So that's good.
So,
Important.
Well, we should have some beer and talk about Steve's beer, I think.
yeah, absolutely.
Because we're in.
We are, and
beer.
that is the other good news is that regardless of what happens to the video, the sound recording on this is entirely separate. It's all being recorded on its own. So the entire conversation will be able to be made public.
gotcha.
Didn't we just say that?
So yeah, a worst case scenario of that
just
with
say
some
that.
nice photos will be a nice montage.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, is this yours?
Yes.
Check.
So, yeah, tell us about your beer.
should we start with the ale?
Yeah,
And
let's
just tell the ale story?
Get everybody on the same page here.
Ale for Bob?
Ale for Bob.
Ale for Bob.
Ale for
Canterbury
Bob.
Ale.
Canterbury Ale for Bob. Here comes Bob.
All right, so that's
That's for me.
for you.
So when you started brewing beers, what was your reference? Where did you gain your knowledge? Was it a book? Was it some friends? Where did
Yeah,
you-
no, I'm a research junkie, so I just read everything I could read, and I looked up on the interwebs and
Yep.
found information.
Not from right here, though, apparently. You were somewhere else when you had the interwebs.
No, I had to,
Went to the library.
commute to New
library.
York City to do that. So yeah, it's just been an ongoing process, and there's still a lot of things I don't know, and
Did you start brewing? Did you build this system and start brewing with this
Yes.
system, or did you have a smaller?
no, I've
you know-
never brewed on anything other than right here.
So this was
So you
it.
are the
So
expert
you
on this system. There's no
built a
person.
full system before you had even brewed
Yes.
beer.
So at the same time I was trying to figure out how to make beer, I was trying to figure out how to make a brew house to make beer.
Yeah. That's
But
fair.
I tell people, it's like on one level, I mean, I want to make a bumper sticker that says "Beer happens" because I mean, homebrewers can be successful without knowing anything. You can make a great beer.
Oh yeah. We had
Or you can make a
those
really
discussions
bad,
yesterday.
you can
at
have a
my-
really bad
at my
beer too.
brewery.
But the more you dig into it and go down the rabbit hole, you realize, oh my gosh, this is incredibly complex. There's,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you
The
get down all
biochemistry of it
these
all.
different
Yeah.
things, and I think because of that, also in the brewing industry and particularly craft brewing industry, and there's a lot of sort of brewers mythology about
Oh, yeah.
things like, you know, it's like you can only wear those socks when you go up to bat, you know.
Yeah.
It's like you can't do it that way, you'll screw everything up, you know. And then there's this another whole world of like the low oxygen brewers, and
Right.
you can't
Hot
make
side
a
aeration
Munich Helles
and-
if you don't
Yeah.
do it this way. And,
Right.
but you know, there's always plenty of anecdotes that prove that to be not the case. So.
Yeah.
So what are we drinking?
So this is Canterbury Ale. It's one of my first brews. It was humbly inspired by like Sierra Nevada, Smutty Nose Pale Ale, just kind of a nice middle of the road Cascade,
Yeah.
but well balanced American Pale Ale.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
thank you.
no, it's spot on. That's spot on.
Yeah,
Now,
but
what
it's-
about your water here? So water is a really important key to because there's
Sure is.
there's like 10 things in beer. It's like
10?
methyl alpha diacetyl alpha bromamine,
Right.
ethyl 2-ditetrabromine
Yep.
biohide.
Yep.
I forgot that one.
Hops,
and then
I think.
He'll wear out
hops,
eventually.
Yeah.
water,
Sounds like an undertaker.
You forgot lupulin.
and hops, water, and what else?
S2.
And that's-
Barley.
Yeah.
Right.
There's 3 things in beer.
Water.
Well, if you're
And water.
if you're going by the
Water.
Reinheitsgebot, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there should be just a few things that are
The
beer.
water's really.
So
you know,
how-
did
what-
you notice when we walked in?
He has water?
cascading
Oh, I get,
outside
so
the building.
tell us
there's a
about
lot of
your
people
water.
that have seen that documentary where they do an experiment and they make beer with like a pond water with ducks swimming in it, and, because that's why beer was so popular, because
Yeah,
it was
because it
What
killed
did
all
you
the
say?
bacteria.
pasteurized the
Yeah,
bad
right,
water
right.
and everything else. I said, well, it probably also tasted like
Terrible.
duck water.
Right.
We weren't going to get sick, but it still tasted like duck water, you know, because you can't make good beer with bad water. You just can't,
Right,
and
right.
the water is absolutely essential
Yeah.
starting point. So, knowing that, our very typical New England deep artesian well is full of iron and manganese.
Of course.
So we have a water softener in the house for many years, and I said, you know, I can't really, I can't make beer with softened water.
No.
I mean, you can, but
Good
so-
for Pilsen.
right. So there's
Well, yeah.
there's that
River
whole
pills,
spectrum
sure,
of water chemistry
Yeah.
but trying to add
Right.
calcium or salts to a already softened water that's going to have residual salts in it is going to end up like all bonkers.
Right.
So I said, well, you know, we really got to find a source of different water somehow or another. But so years ago, some lady came and did some dowsing, and I said, well, you know, just in case the world comes to an end, maybe you could find a well that I could dig down the road. This was way before the brewery was
Oh.
more than a glint in my eye. And so when we started this, we went out there, and sure enough, the little tag was still in the woods there where she had found it, and called up my buddy with a big excavator
drill
and
rig?
she said there's all of the beautiful pure water you're ever going to want 10 feet down.
Wow.
So we start digging.
We have one of those dowsing rods, by
I
the way.
know.
It's at your.
I know. Right.
Yeah.
We're digging away, and I tested it because we started in the kitchen with a map, and she said, "Oh, it's here." I said, "Okay." Took the map. Let's go outside. She, boop. I'm like, "No way!" Like right on. So I was like, "Okay," marked it. We start digging this thing, and we're digging and digging and digging, and at about 9 feet 11 inches, we
Get water.
Get cobbles and get water.
Yeah, artesian well. Yeah.
hit ledge.
Oh, ledge.
No water. Ledge.
Oh,
And I
wow.
looked at the guy, he looked at me, he's like, I'm just digging. I don't know.
digger.
We hit rock, there's no water.
He said the only thing you could do is we'll fill it back up, I'll go home and you'll pay me, for my half day's work, or I can call my guy who blasts and he can come and blast this ledge and we can blow it all up and keep digging. So I said, okay. And it's like Las Vegas, right? It's like, oh my God.
So you filled it up and went home.
So
No, he blasted.
we called the
Oh,
blaster.
wait, I'm such a bad guesser.
He set things up so nicely.
We blasted this thing, and the blast guy says, "Yeah, I've done this a couple times before." He said, "Yeah, if that water vein is down there, one of a few different things could happen.
You could clog it.
You could clog it,
Yeah, that's
forever,
Or you could enhance it.
or it's like
shatter it
blowing.
off.
You could be like blowing the bottom out of a bathtub.
Yeah,
It could be it could just go, whatever it might be there, it could just go away somewhere where we don't even know where it is. So this was like this sort of quick little hydrogeology 101, like where does the water go and how do we get to it without messing it all up? And I said, okay, well, let's just do it. So we blasted it, and then he left. I mean, that was all, they drilled, put this stuff in, a lot of preparation, and then we all, okay, let's go back here. And he said, okay, see ya. That was it.
Right.
Then we just started digging. The excavator guy started digging out again. And he's digging all this broken rock out. We're down at like 16 feet. And it's dry as a bone. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Oh, holy shit.
This is so stupid.
Holy bummers, man.
Las Vegas.
And then just
Last
at the
summer.
last
Keep going.
ninth hour, just this little, it looked like a little water fountain, beep, out of the rock. I'm like, there's water! He's like, okay, that's good. He said, I've had enough for today.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll just let this see what happens and what it looks like in the morning. And so we did, and there was some water coming in, and but I'm thinking, little quick calculations, like how much water is that really, is that really enough? And I thought, well, maybe if I let it build up over the course of a week, I'll have enough to make a barrel of beer. I was thinking optimistically, And then he came back and we set in all the concrete well tiles and crushed
Backfilled it with
stone and
gravel,
everything, and did the whole 9 yards and capped it with clay, and looking down in that hole, and it just very slowly.
A little bit of water.
Okay. About a week later, we had a big rainstorm, and I went out the next day, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
had filled right up, because it did plug something, but apparently that was the static pressure that built up after
Pushed the plug out.
The rainstorm pushed the plug out and filled up the bathtub.
And you've had water ever since.
And we've had really great water ever since. There's been a couple of these drought years where in the middle of the summer, it has
Gets a little low.
threatened to go low. So I've created a system where I can switch back and forth between the deep well and that well and let it build up and just.
What's the chemistry?
So it's actually perfect brewing water for making like a Canterbury ale, like right down the middle.
Yep.
Perfect. Really don't have to do anything to it at all.
Great. Awesome.
So I tend to add a little bit of particularly calcium chloride to most everything I do, just because I like a little bit more elevated mouthfeel. My mash, I think, also tends to, because of my recirculating heating system, tends to mash a little bit hotter than it says it does, or the effect is that it's a little bit hotter, so that also contributes. So I think that's kind of like a thing that people that know they say you get, it's a nice mouthy beer. Right. It's not like super dry, and I'm not a big fan of like the American pale ales that are like super dry. So that all just goes with I'm brewing what I like.
Yeah, no, the pale ale. Your
This is
pale
a
ale is
great story.
I still have your pale ale glass at my house.
I hope you tell that
I
story a
cherish.
lot.
So yeah, that's great.
I tell stories for
Yeah.
4 hours on a Saturday and 4 hours on a Sunday, and then I go home and fall asleep.
There's a story in every tap.
Yeah, starting
There you
every
go.
time. So what's the next thing down the line here?
Oh, you got to try
So
the ESB. That's
Big Ben
really
is
nice.
so again, like when you talk about British bitters, people kind of glaze over and oh, I don't like bitter. Or as soon as somebody says, oh, I don't like something, I give them a little taste of it because
Yeah.
invariably they say, oh, well, no, I like that.
There we go.
I want
Time
that.
for the ESB.
So, I think a lot of places that do British bitters, whether they do them correctly or not, they call them just English pale ales more often now, just because it's
Right.
like a Domf beer,
Right. You
So let's
just
call
throw
it
in a
something
weird
that's
word,
more
word,
digestible.
People don't want it. Yeah.
People
Dom.
need.
So what makes a British bitter ale?
So British bitters just are kind of on a spectrum, and they became popular in the early turn of the century, I guess, 1920s, 30s. Before that, it was all dark milds, and what distinguishes a mild from a bitter is distinguishing itself from a mild because it's not because it's bitter like an IPA, it's because it's bitter like not a mild.
Like not a mild. So it's relative
So it's
to what they
bitter.
do.
It does have a slightly higher hopping rate and maybe a little bit more upfront hop nose, particularly than a mild, but definitely not. It's
Yeah.
not at all like bitter like an IPA.
So
or
was there a
anything like that.
purpose in was there a purpose in this as a matter of economy or pubs or something? I mean, what was the catalyst that decided that they needed to come up with this sort of beer? Just something different? There's
Oh yeah, I don't really know exactly what that shift was historically. Why mild bitter?
some brewmaker.
There's still like
made it.
milds were definitely.
The way I remembered reading about it is that quite a bit of it had to do with the original gravity and then ultimately the alcohol that was in the beer, so that you could bitters were lower alcohol, and ESBs were higher and IPAs were higher than that. So if you're drinking during the day,
That's how it's
thinking
taxed,
about
yeah. They would
what
tax
sort
them
of
on the
what sort of
Yeah.
alcohol amount that you're going to take, and then the taxation
Oh,
was
there's a-
different, so that you're taxing on the amount of alcohol
Alcohol.
that's there. So if
Interesting.
your bitters had to be under 3.8 or 4.0 or whatever, and they were taxed in a certain way. But your extra special bitters were higher alcohol, they were taxed a little higher.
Yeah, I think it was taxed
And
on
you drank less of
the
them, or you
grain-
drank more of them.
grain weight or something, which of course is sort of equates to alcohol content.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so bitters. I mean, most milds were never really. I don't think there was any traditional mild over like 4%. Like
Yeah,
that was the
4-ish, yeah.
cap-ish.
Well, that was
And-
water at some point, right?
Well, it was a table
The
beer,
water was
yeah.
the water was poison, and beer was boiled water. Nobody knew about bacteria,
Right.
so
They
it
didn't even know the
became.
yeast that was in there. I mean,
Really?
the Reinheitsgebot early on was just saying that barley and malt and hops. They weren't
Right.
talking about yeast. They just said,
No.
you don't want to have other things in there.
Wow,
And
no,
they didn't know that there was yeast involved.
because that was just in the air. The
Yeah,
yeast
it
is
was just
everywhere.
there,
We are yeast machines. Wow, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a neat evolution.
Well, that's the most fascinating story of beer to me is like the origins of lager yeast and where that
Oh,
came
yeah.
from. That's
Yeah.
that is like the coolest, weirdest
Yeah.
thing. Like how that just happened
And the
and
temperatures.
changed the
that
whole
they-
world.
Yeah.
So, are you lagering here?
I have made a couple different lagers. I'm not.
You're
My
not set up
system.
for it.
I have to. I'm going to change how my fermenter's temperature control works, so I can do that more predictably. But they're not really set up to reheat. I can
So-
keep it cold, and I can.
Yeah, I think you'd be
go
able to keep it cold. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't reheat for that diacetyl rest.
Right.
And then bring it back down.
They bring it.
I mean, I could figure out some weird way to do it, but I want to be able to just flip switches.
Are
and
you
push buttons.
cutting blocks of ice off the legs?
Well, that's how before I got these unitanks, which are temperature and pressure controlled and everything, I had just atmospheric fermenters, which was I wake up in the middle of the night. Oh my God, I gotta go check.
What's the temperature?
Yeah.
I can come down here with a hose and spray it down.
Yeah.
Cool
Put
it
a
down
towel
again.
on
With a towel on it and a fan. Oh yeah. Right?
I've heard that.
We've done that before.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is much more civilized.
I did that a couple months ago because my glycol chiller was dedicated to something else, and I had to wrap up.
Yeah, my
Wrap a tank.
real glycol chiller crapped out a couple months ago, and then I had a booster that I built out of a small chest freezer full of glycol with a coil in it. So now that's my only chilling
Oh.
system, but it's not as powerful as the little chiller. So
Yeah.
I'm going to make another, because I paid $800 for this dumb little thing, which is essentially like a deconstructed window air conditioning.
Yeah, but it's black and it has SS on it, and it's really cool, It's,
So I deconstructed an air conditioning unit,
Right.
and I'm going to make my own for $150, and then when
Right.
it craps out, I'll just throw it in the swamp and I'll make another one. So
there's somebody like him 100 years ago threw some stuff in the swamp.
You
You can
know,
imagine what's out there in
in a
that.
1,000 years, that swamp is going to be very interesting to somebody out there
it's
digging
not
with
as
a
not as
trowel
deep
and
as it used to be.
toothbrush. Like, it's a chest freezer. I wonder what they use that for.
You could have used that swamp to make your beer. You would save the money digging that hole in the ground.
Well, I have thought about using it. So because I'm using the way the system for my water works, I'm using my shallow well water for cooling, which is really great in the wintertime, but it's really not great in the summertime
Yeah.
because it's a very big
Your
swing
deep
of
well will
temperature.
stay the same temp.
Yeah.
The
Nice
deep well,
cold.
so I'm trying to figure out a way to sort of like with the way that these chillers work with the small pipe inside a big pipe. If I can
Yeah.
run a small pipe through the pipe that goes between here and the deep well manifold that
Yeah.
then goes back to
That'll
the
be your
house,
counterflow chiller.
I can just set the chiller water up on my deep well and not have to dig anything to get that pipe to come here. So I can run that pipe, fish that pipe through my water. Because that's a 1-inch pipe. I don't need a 1-inch feed really.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't need a whole lot of water for cooling, especially if it's 50 degrees.
Right.
But when it's 65 degrees, trying to get it down to 64 degrees
right,
is pretty
doesn't
hard.
work.
So one of the other questions I have that and I'm sure I've asked you this every time I've been here, but we drove by your farm on the way in, and what's the challenges of indigenous hops and
So
growing hops and
I
being a
have-
hop farmer and
So, I mean, yeah.
The poles, all the poles,
yeah,
the
they're
wires.
yeah.
So, I mean, indigenous hops like that are originally from this
Well, are there any
area
I mean,
historically, or
yeah? So what you grow hops? Or you've been
so
growing hops.
Against better wisdom, I planted 11 varieties out there, and it's proven to me also that growing hops is. How hard could that be?
Sounds like you would grape. Bob's like, I'm going to be a farmer, Ken. We're going to grow grapes. I'll take care of it. I'm like, okay, it's going to be some work, but no problem. I got it.
Yeah.
I'm going to prune those grapes. I'm going to take care of those grapes.
Yeah, well, beer is an agricultural product, and
is an
agriculture
agricultural
is definitely a full-time job, as I know from my farming stint. But the hops, any hops in this latitude, the latitude is perfect for hops. Like 43 is perfect for hops, no matter where you go. But our climate is not at all. It's actually really becoming worse.
So humid.
It's too hot.
So those
humid?
warm, wet spring mornings when downy mildew in particular is ready to roll, it's just it's a perfect storm. And I bought these plants that were supposedly downy mildew free,
No.
and there's no hops from 100 miles around here, so I didn't blow in on the wind.
It's interesting. The
The
Connecticut
first year I had downy mildew everywhere. Like, what is going on here?
The Connecticut
get a rebate or
River
something?
Valley in Massachusetts, Connecticut, that was a major hop producing area
No, I
in the
didn't know that.
1800s.
Oh, really?
So we got a lot of hops
Wow.
out of the Northeast back when there were so many breweries around here.
Oh, yeah,
There
well,
weren't-
that makes sense.
There wasn't the Cascade, there wasn't the Northwest hop source yet.
And most people
It's here.
historically say they call it a cluster, as a variety cluster
Yep.
type, is what they say. If you get like a wild hop from a farm,
It's-
old
it's
farmstead,
like-
it's going to
it's
be
like-
like cluster,
Yep.
which is strictly a bittering hop, and for as far as aroma or flavor hop, it kind of has a ode to athletic socks or something like
Right.
that. It's not really supposed
Yeah,
to
so
be.
it just goes into the hot, goes into the hot side of the brew.
But over the years, people have brought me root cuttings from, oh yeah, I found this by an old farm thing
Right.
or whatever. And every single one of them, the leaves and the cones looked very, very different. So the morphology of these plants were not
Different.
super similar. So it makes me wonder if that's really true, or if there's, or if maybe there's been some mutations over time. But so one of the varieties that I have over here by the stairs is from this guy, this musician, contra dance guy, Dudley, who's 90 years old. He bought this little farm that he has over on Shaker Road from the Shakers back in 1950.
And it had some hops growing on it?
And the Shakers did grow hops. They grew them for medicinal purposes and sachets and hops teas and things like that. And there were hops growing at the village at one time, and that's another whole story. But so this old fella's daughter's boyfriend shows up, and he had been coming over here and hanging out, and he said, "Hey, Dudley's got hops growing," and he says, "Dudley, those are hops." Like Dudley's like, "Oh, I don't know what those are. I didn't plant them." So here's this guy. He's been on this property for 60, 70 years. He did not plant these hops. He didn't
Yeah.
even know they were hops, and they're in his garden, growing all over the place. He's, "Oh, I just thought it was a vine or something."
Yeah.
So I took cuttings from that, thinking that that's probably, and that land was actively Shaker land, so it was probably just some holdout
Yeah.
that's been growing through this stone wall for 100 years.
Yeah.
And that talk about agricultural survivors. That's the agricultural stock that is going to be good for someone like me to grow here, especially if it happens to be like a Honeycrisp or a Diamond in the Rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, and I explain to people, it's like, you go on the road, you see a lot of apple trees, but
They're not good.
They're not really like, you don't want it. It's not
So that
Honeycrisp.
was the
So you're hopeful though that there is
So
a
I'm
hop,
thinking
so
that I'm holding out for that one, and I think, but it's one plant, and I have to get to the point where I can
Propagate.
multiply a few
Yeah.
more out to get
Yeah.
enough to actually make one batch of something, whatever that's going to be, and then really put it into the boil super late, like a lot of my post-boil cool kettle hops stands to try to see what that flavor
Yeah.
is, and hopefully it's not athletic socks, but.
What would you call a beer
we had,
that smelled like athletic socks?
you were making beer
Is there a
from-
thing for that?
From a
There it
hop
is.
we found on Round
Called cider.
Pond.
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It was
there
growing
was.
at your place, naturally. It's been growing for years, right?
No, that's a different one. The one that's on my property was found wild on the property.
Oh,
So that's another one that I have to share with you. So my wife and I bought a homestead from the late 1700s, and our son went out running through the backyard first spring. He's like, "Dad, there's hops growing out here." So I dug them up, moved them to the outside of my little outbuilding where I brew beer, and there's no downy mildew, there's no issues
Yeah.
whatsoever. They
Huh.
grow great. They have a sort of a citrusy sort of character to them.
Nice.
I don't think the alpha's really high on them, but I use them as a, for my pale ales for a late
Oh, nice.
late edition.
Oh, wow.
But originally we found some on a mountain bike ride up to Round Pond.
Oh,
in
really?
Belknap.
Oh, I go running up there all the
And
time.
we were
I-
coming
I
down the
see what
hill,
that
we're
is,
bombing
huh?
along,
Huh.
watching the rocks and all this. I'm like, whoa! Todd's looking at the rig. What are you looking at? And I said, I think I just saw hops growing to these trees. And sure they were. They were growing all the way up these trees with a
Wow.
big vine. And
Wow.
put him in his water bottle.
that's the way you remember it. When I went home, I came back with Maya and the kids, and we harvested those hops into big freezer bags.
Oh,
So
I
you
see.
never
that.
took the plant.
I did not take the plant from there.
Well, so yeah, send me a GPS drop for where.
I know where that is. I know where it is, though. I could go right back there.
Yeah.
I could go right back where it is.
It's coming off that really nasty section, right? On the loop
It's not. It's kind of close to the end.
of that nasty section, right? Before you get,
Yeah, you come down off of that, and you can relax a little bit.
Yeah.
It's no longer.
So did you
know.
brew with those ones that you harvested?
I did, yeah.
And what
I
did you
used to
find out
make-
about those?
Those were a little bit more like a Fuggle type of hop. Really
Nice.
sort of classic style, nice balance to them.
Wow.
Not
Nice.
excessively high alpha sort of format.
Yeah, so
really a wonderful
florally-
hop. Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
really nice all around hop. So I used to make this around Pallandale.
there's hope, yeah.
nice.
Yeah, there is
Yeah,
hope.
there's hope. And I got the rhizomes. I can dig it up. They're just spreading like mad. And if you're still growing, if you still have the bandwidth to do that sort of stuff.
Well, I think what I have to do out here is just cut everything down, just keep mowing one season,
Start over.
kill everything
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
and then
Get
just
rid of
start
the
all
mildew.
over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Let the mildew
Yeah.
blow away, and just try to start again. But
Yeah.
with something that's going to be agriculturally more viable, and hopefully, something unique. And I think that's all, again, back to the relevancy thing. I mean, I think that the craft beer world loves that kind of unique, like, yeah, I'm growing hops that nobody else has.
Yeah. No.
Super cool.
At this scale, if you're doing something that has your own hops, I mean, you're really doing something that nobody else is doing, but you're sourcing all of your material from the world out there, right? If you're sourcing something that's from your backyard, the intrinsic value there
Oh, it
is
goes way up.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
it's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
particularly since what you're creating is an experience here. I mean, this isn't about branding something to buy it at Walmart or Costco
Right.
on
Yeah.
sale for $10 a case.
Well, that's what I tell people. I say,
This is about
I
the
sell
experience.
experience.
Right.
Beer is definitely involved, but I sell experience.
Yeah, right. No,
That is what we tell
just
everybody
looking
in
at the
our
driveway
woods.
is an
That's what
experience.
it's
Just
all about.
finding Canterbury Aleworks is a GPS challenge for this.
Especially when your GPS doesn't work out here.
Or if it tries to send you, down a Class 6 road in a Prius or something.
Yeah, but it said
You might think you're on a Class 6 road on a couple
Yeah,
turns,
that's
but
There's kind of a movement to this too. There's people who are growing barley now. There are people that are malting it
Yeah.
in the Northeast. Are bringing back
Well, I'm getting a lot of my
malters and-
base malts from Blue Ox.
From Blue Ox.
And they do floor
Yeah.
malting, which is super cool because that's exactly the kind of profile like a Maris Otter or Thomas
Right.
Fawcett, Maris Otter or Golden Promise or something like that I use for the British stuff. So I can use their stuff for British stuff,
yeah.
and it
Perfect.
kind of melds right in. So it's nice also to say I'm using a local
Yeah.
maltster, with Maine-grown barley.
Barley, yeah,
that's
that's
super
huge.
cool.
I can't support that more. I just love
That's
that.
great
I mean,
stuff.
that gives all of this, a time and a place and a meaning that is lost in the whole globalization project. Which I'm not against globalization, but I love the local thing because it keeps us all alive.
one of the things about the book that I mentioned earlier, one of the things that's so amazing about reading this book is that there are breweries in Europe that have been brewing beer almost continuously for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, like Weinstefaner in Munich, is
Yeah.
like 1,000 years or something.
That's just mind-blowing.
Yeah. And they didn't get their stuff from Costco to make
No,
the beer. Right?
no,
They have contracts as farmers that grow the barley. There's
Oh, where are we
malters.
going now?
Well, I
We're gonna
think-
take a nap.
Well, what were you
Yeah, I
going to
think
say,
we're
Ken?
getting-
We're
Good, take a
gonna
nap.
get off track.
Getting on
So
time, so
I
we
know
gotta get-
another source of a wild, potentially native hop,
Oh, nice.
and it's right at the end of Bob's old driveway on Eastman.
Yep,
So right at the end of your driveway, just to the north,
Taylor Road.
on Taylor Road, sorry, on Taylor Road,
Yep.
there's wild elderberries and there's wild hops. And I rode past it this
And it's
last
still there?
fall. They're still there.
Awesome. Thank you. What are we drinking here?
So this is Long Winter's Nap. This is kind of like the
A long winter's nap.
There's
coming
a
up for
long
you.
winter's nap coming up.
the end of the brew year. I do have one more barrel aged beer coming out for in another week or so, but this is kind of like this is the big 10% holiday stout. That been sitting in I used Greg Mee's
Greg's?
bourbon barrel for the second time around
yeah.
to age this.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
great. He was talking, I was over there with Greg, and he's swapping some of his barrels with his brother to do the maple
Yeah, yeah,
syrup in,
right.
and then
Oh.
he'll reuse those for a spirit.
Oh, wow.
And so if he's swapping with you too, that's
Well, I was.
great.
He still hasn't. I keep asking. So what do I owe you for this barrel? He's like, oh, I don't know.
Right.
It's like,
That's great.
so maybe I should just give it back to him after the long winter's nap's been in it, and then he can
Yeah.
cross
Rotate
pollinate.
it
That's
around.
right. He'll
Yeah.
put an ODV in there.
Put something in there.
Get
and,
some
yeah.
nice dark.
Right.
Yeah, but
component
if
to
you
it.
I
could
think
get...
Petite Blue might go in there nicely.
Yeah. Oh, Petite Blue. But then you get the bourbon, then the maple, and then back to beer. Right, so you get some of that bourbon and maple. So you can't.
This has got so
you
much
can't get
going on.
You can't
Oh,
get
yeah.
those things.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is.
So with your one
super.
barrel system, and you're putting 60 pounds of grain in here, you don't have enough to, you're
Yes.
growing half a barrel at a
Yes.
time when
So
you do
yeah,
this?
it's a 60 or 70 pound
Yeah.
for a half barrel
Right.
in my 30-gallon mash.
Right.
It's to the brim pretty much at that point, and then yeah. So this is the first time I've tried different ways. You know, it's sort of like firewood. Every year that it's like there's got to be a better way. You know, so there's got to be a better way to brew this beer with my
Is there a
dinky
better
little
way
system.
for firewood?
Bigger kettle.
In 35 years, I haven't figured it out yet.
It just works.
Propane.
Yeah. It's just-
No matter how you split it,
That's
it's
the way I
still
split it.
work,
Just-
No pun intended.
yeah.
No, this is crazy
It's
good.
delicious.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, so I did. Like I said, I brewed that half batch, scooped all the spent grains out, filled it back up again, brewed another half batch, put that wort into this, let it sit, topped it off, boiled it, put all
Made your
this
beer.
spent
Yep.
grains in the cooler for a couple days. Did the same thing again 2
With
days
all the spent
later.
grains?
So I had this
get
big
a
giant
little bit
tub
more.
of spent grains I've been humping around, putting in the cooler. They never really cooled off. So that may be another part of if there's a sour aspect to
Yeah,
that.
for
It's
the
just that
cutting one,
those, it's maybe a little bit of a sour mash
Yeah.
because that mash sat
Good
hot
phenomenon,
for
yeah.
a couple days.
Yeah. No, I don't get the sourness. You know.
But no, I mean for the cottywomple part, you know.
Oh, the
so that-
cottywomple.
yeah,
I
so like-
did get it in the cottywomple. I'm not getting it in this.
Yeah, and so
Have you ever done just the running so that if you're lautering it off into your kettle and you got all your high gravity stuff, but there's still some sugars, you're down to 1020 or something, and you just
Yeah.
run that off in a bucket,
oh
and then
yeah,
ditch those
I
grains entirely, and then
Yeah, I mean,
reboil that.
I could have done that. I could have built that wort
Instead of-
back up, but I wanted to get on with. I didn't want to
I know
let this sit too much longer. You
Right.
know, just so I wanted to get on with this batch, and the cottywomple part of that party guile experiment was more expendable than the first part. So I was like, if that doesn't work, I'll just throw it out. You
No, I
know,
know,
like-
that's part of the fun of brewing.
Yeah. No,
It's a little-
this is
I
spectacular.
I have been on a tear lately visiting breweries and all over New Hampshire and even
And none of
further.
them come close to this style with a character here.
Is that what you're
Not
gonna-
even
no?
close.
Yeah, not even-
Really, you were going to say that?
Yeah.
You
That's
knew
what
that he
I
was going to say that.
I
Is
have
that what
been
you were gonna
all
say?
over New England,
Wow.
and I've tasted
Really?
beer. And
That's awesome.
I've been in Portland recently, and there's some great brewing going on in Portland. But a lot of what it's starting to feel like is there's a lot of sameness. There's a lot of the same thing over and over and over. And I come here, and the taste, it's a well-balanced, well-made beer, but it doesn't taste like all the others. It's unique and special. And
Yeah.
well, thank you.
It's good.
That's the key. That's what I think is why this is all being supported, is because the general public is sick and tired of the same old stuff. They're tired of that.
I still get
And
young
we
guys
want-
coming in here
we
and say,
want
I want to
craft,
start a brewery.
Yeah.
You what?
we
I
want
said, you
unique.
better have a good backstory, because, oh my God, you know, it's like,
And you gotta like to tell the story over and over and over. So
That's right.
there's that.
Hot, tasty beer, huh?
that's a tasty beer.
So if you're a creative person and you've gotten into craft brewery as the thing that you're doing, and then you have a beautiful English pub space out in the middle of the woods, in the middle of conservation
Canterbury.
land, in the middle of Canterbury, in the middle of New Hampshire, on a dirt road, then you've sort of reached utopia, haven't you? I mean, you're kind of doing it. You've kind of broken the mold of our culture and just found something really cool to do.
So
I applaud that.
Well, thank you.
And you're doing a great job.
You watch people come in, and I can tell by the body language and the eyes, like immediately. I don't even have to ask. Have you been here before? And then so my.
I come in with that look every time I've been here. So
I always gravitate and like meet and greet. Hey, how you doing? Welcome. And they're like, I said, how you doing? And they're like, I'm good now.
I've come home.
I don't know. I dispute that because every time I walk in, I feel wide-eyed.
Yeah.
No, you've really.
It's even better than it was last time.
No,
And that's just the front end. The few times you've shared with me some of the back end, that where your kettle and the way in which your beer's made, it's all the same back there as it is up here. It's still just as fun and creative. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's all part of the fun of it. And with the even naming the beers, people say, do you do all the write-ups and everything? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's half the fun of it. I mean, I said I do this magic trick, and I have a way to make people say words that they've never said in their whole life before. Cottywomple.
Yes, right. Like kind of.
I had a beer that was a bitter red, I called it, and it had a suspiciously orange-haired caricature on the front of the label, and I called it Snollygoster. And Snollygoster it's sort of like a poltergeist, only it's this mythological creature that parents would scare their children, because the Snollygoster, if you were bad, the Snollygoster would come and take you, and snatch you up,
take you away,
drag you out into the yard.
If you don't eat all your green peas tonight, Chuck, the Snollygoster is going to take you away.
Feasting on naughty children.
Shall I have another Snollygoster? I can't even say it now.
So you hear people, out there, talking amongst themselves, looking at the menu, reading things like Snollygoster and Cottywomple and immense, intense, fat alpha.
So how many people can you fit into this space before you started to feel
amazingly enough, this is approved for 20 people, but I'm often very bad at counting, so I think that there's probably been more, but I don't know.
So 20-ish.
So 40 or 50, I don't know.
Well, you have all the space outside too.
So the outdoor space, and the
That's
you can buy a beer by the glass.
So we did that for
COVID.
COVID spring last year, but we had all the best intentions to create that previously, but never did. So we got that together and realized, oh my God, we should have done this years ago. But
because now it's another 20.
So that's 24, I think, is the approval number out there. But I mean, Wild West COVID. I mean, people can. It's like Woodstock. People can be anywhere.
But how much beer can you brew?
So 50 people, and with a one-barrel system, that's gonna keep you kind of busy.
It's been.
How many batches of beer do you have to brew a week in July?
So at the end of the year,
How many barrels a year do you?
I get more efficient all the time, so my barrels per year doesn't seem to go up a whole lot.
But you're brewing less frequently.
But I'll double batch most weeks because I take weeks off. So I travel for races and that sort of thing. So my son will take over here, or a friend will kick in and do the tap room and steer the ship for a weekend. But so I'm on the order of 50 barrels per year. So on the average of one batch a week.
One a week.
Which is really great if you're, I harvest my house yeast, which is the Boddington's yeast, which, the Vermont craft world found was like super cool for big IPAs. If you ferment it hot, you ferment it in the middle of the road, it's great for British styles. Ferment it a little cooler, it's great for American styles. So it's a super great house yeast, and it's a top cropper. So I made like a sterilized shop vac that I can just harvest my yeast, boom, done,
and reuse it.
put it in the cooler, and off we go. So
That's great. So we're up on an hour. I don't know how much of this
Really?
goes out into the world. Yeah.
Wow.
And so we should bring it to an end. We will, whatever happens, whether we're able to be seen by everybody. And the questions people are asking and the comments that they're making, people are getting a good portion
A
of the
little bit of
conversation.
it coming through. Yeah.
Good, great.
So, but I will make sure that everybody knows that I'm going to put the audio track, if not audio and video, to this up later, so people can listen to it, and you must listen to it because it's really, this is a great conversation. I think I could go on for hours talking stories with Steve. So, but we can't. We're gonna end the show at 6:30 like we always do, and we look forward to seeing you all, hopefully next Monday. Don't get discouraged. We will find the internet again. It does exist out there, I know. It won't be where the good beer is, but it might be, it will be somewhere out there, and
Right.
we'll find it. If not, we'll see you back at the
Because
winery.
the good beer
So-
is not where the internet is. Maybe that's the
That's
key.
actually kind of the key. Maybe that's the key.
So please, everyone, if you haven't
internet's really bad
figured
right
this
now.
out,
Little
whether
house
you
here.
heard this now or read it in my post, get yourself here. You will not regret it. It's a great experience. I hope you do, and if you do, let us know. I'd love to hear what you think about it. So. Until then, we're going to surprise you with some other place or
We'll
some
surprise
other topic.
ourselves, actually.
Surprise ourselves with some other place and topic next
I'll be in
week
France, so.
at 5:30. Chuck will be in France. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll join us with
Yeah.
the internet.
Well,
if that's
yeah,
a
on the internet.
possibility.
Yeah, if it's a high internet place, yes, for sure.
Great. So I hope you can join us. And if not, we'll see you some future Monday. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll sign off for the evening.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next Monday. Thank you.